2, I'd like to welcome Meli. Hey, Meli, can you hear us?
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for joining us today. And, I know you're super busy and you guys are gearing up for one of your large events that's coming up in November. So we'll talk about that later. But also, I want to congratulate you on the launch of your $6.3 million venture capital fund. Maybe, just to share a little bit more, how long has this been in the making? And then we can go into details about what that is so that our audience gets to know more.
Yeah, absolutely. So yes, we announced our $6.3 million venture fund. And it has been, I think we're raising about 1.5 years. We've done a couple closes already, but with SEC regulations, you actually are not allowed to publicly announce anything about your fund until you've done a final close, because that's considered a public offering. So we've actually been investing and have had money already that we were able to execute some investments prior to the announcement. But again, you are not allowed to announce anything till it's closed. So yeah, so was exciting to announce that last month or 2 months ago. Yeah.
Yeah, last month. How do you feel about that? Like, I know it's exciting, but was it something that you're working towards for a long time?
Yeah. So when we launched Mana Up, we always knew we wanted to raise a fund. We just didn't want to have to wait to launch the accelerator. So we wanted to hit the ground running, get the accelerator up and going, start to support the entrepreneurs, learn what their needs are and where capital could be best used. So that was really why we launched the accelerator without the fund, knowing we would raise one shortly after, just so we can get going. But yeah, so that's always been part of the plan. But it's really exciting that we have this capital, as we now have 63 companies that have come through the program, really seeing, what are the capital needs? What could capital do for the companies to heavily accelerate their growth? And so it's really exciting now to have this capital so that we can now execute on some of these needs where we see fit.
Yeah. And you guys chose Kohana Rum and Big Island Coffee Roasters as the first 2 companies to invest in. I mean, why these 2 companies, if you can share?
Yeah. So, we really look at a lot of different factors as investors. Kohana Rum was in cohort 1. Really, a lot of it's around execution with the entrepreneurs, growth trajectory, looking at global trends happening. And, they and Big Island Coffee Roasters fit in really nicely into global trends around authenticity, connection to culture, agriculture, sustainability, transparency, all these big things that we're seeing. And both of those categories in food, being alcohol and caffeine, I think have never really had a downward slope. It's always just been like this. So, but really incredible companies with Kohana, with their native Hawaiian sugarcane, really having a huge impact in agriculture here, and that true, sugarcane to bottle, whatever you might want to call it, facility here. And then also with Big Island Coffee Roasters, really both of these companies getting global awards, national awards for the quality of their product. So these aren't just local products that are good for our local competition or local, competing against just local. It's actually really being seen on a global stage as being the top in class. And so those are some of the things that we look for. And both of these companies really reflect that.
So, would Hawaii-based companies that have not gone through this Mana Up Accelerator be eligible to apply for, investment from you guys? Or do they have to go through the accelerator first?
So we will primarily look at companies who have gone through the accelerator, but it's not exclusive to companies coming through. We just get a much better idea of the entrepreneur, the company, and being able to have helped them in the past. I think that's super important when you think about investment dollars and what kind of investors you want to be looking for. It's beyond just smart money. It's really around finding an investor that's a partner, a true partner for your company, because someone that's really willing to get into the trenches, because it is going to get hard. Someone who really becomes part of like your family and your company. And so it's almost like choosing, I mean, your co-founder is really important too. So that's becoming part of your family. You end up spending more time with them than you probably do sometimes with your spouse or partner. But investors are very similar. And so we really get a front row seat, as do they with us, as to how we can help them and understanding their challenges. So it really creates a nice pathway for us being able to really come in with capital, already knowing them and the company.
Yeah, so I mean, for at least for these two companies, what is the capital used for? I mean, is it more for human resources? Is it more for, I don't know, land expansion, for farming, things like that? What do you see, I mean, companies using your investment monies for?
Well, it's always different. But I think in general, companies using it for increasing or growing sales, whether that be hiring on new sales people or growing new sales channels. It could also be with supply chain, like you were saying, whether that be in your own land, being able to, with sugarcane and other things like that for this particular instance. There's a lot of different areas, but of course, we want to see the capital used to exponentially grow the company, because of course, as we put in capital, we want to see a return at some point. That would be more the long-term goal from an ROI standpoint, return of cash. But in the meantime, really looking at profitability and revenue and that upward momentum, which is going to impact valuation, which ultimately leads to, the ROI. So yes, we want to make sure that the monies that they're utilizing, and they let us know about what those are. We look at that and looking at those projections as to if there's an influx of capital into certain areas, whether they be sales, distribution. I know Kohana Rum is really growing. They're at 25,000 case production. They're moving into 75,000 case production. And that's where you get into those really big levels where you truly can become have a global presence, because you have that kind of supply. So that's all really exciting.
Yeah, so I mean, the sales ROI, it's a good segue into my next question actually. What are some of the key metrics that you use to determine the success of the investment? Is it purely just ROI and sales, or are there other things that you guys look at as well?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately it is return of cash. But in the meantime, we do look at profitability and revenue, which of course leads to valuation. So those are the things we would look at first, and making sure those numbers are continuing to steadily grow.
Awesome. So, because this session is recorded, we'll be using, snippets of it for future as well. So I want to ask you kind of, your spiel about what is Mana Up, and, how can you share about how this whole organization came about?
Yes. So what is Mana Up? We are an accelerator and venture fund that's focused on consumer brands that are headquartered here in Hawaii. Our first cohort launched in January of 2018. Brittany Hyde, my co-founder, and I founded Mana Up, and really started putting together the strategy and kind of what this whole thing was going to be, and really kind of got together in 2017 to build this out, and of course launch in 2018 with cohort 1. We've all, I've worked with a few different accelerators. I was an entrepreneur myself in the Bay Area and heavily in tech. And I think we saw a little bit of a gap in the consumer brands and product arena, not really getting the attention that was being given to other types of startups, more in more tech. But I really believe that tech is not a silo. It's really layered onto everything. With Mana Up and our brands and our products, we wouldn't be able to do half of the things we do, if not most of them, without technology, whether that be logistics, e-commerce, digital marketing. It's really leveling the playing field and allowing us to have an equal advantage no matter where we are. I wouldn't quite say we're equal, because Hawaii is always, of course, more challenging to do business. We've got farther places to go and get to from a destination standpoint, but technology is really game changing. So, we saw a gap in these amazing products that we've always had. Even prior to Mana Up, we've had incredible products, but a lot of times it's been our best kept secret. And what kind of jobs could we be creating? What kind of sustainable livelihood and revenue could we create if we could help scale these product businesses that are elevating the brand of Hawaii, that with some mentorship resources and access to capital. So, you know, from a criteria standpoint for our companies, we require that they are headquartered here in Hawaii. We believe that's a huge piece in economic development. How are we creating jobs, C-suite jobs, executive level jobs that can create opportunity here, different kinds of opportunity here. We also require the companies are at 100,000 annual revenue or more to get into our program. So our program is really meant for scaling. These are a little bit past idea stage. They're not still tinkering with their recipes. They're not figuring out their packaging or at the farmer's market once a month. They have figured out some of those things and they're really ready to take advantage of the resources that we provide. So that's another criteria. They need to be elevating the brand of Hawaii. So there's lots of consumer brands products, there's lots of products, but we really want to work with the ones that have a story, that are connected to Hawaii, that are really incorporating that as part of their narrative to create some of that competitive advantage. The brand of Hawaii is one of the most recognized brands in the world. And so we believe that's our competitive edge or unfair advantage. And that's what we're really double downing on to helping these types of companies scale globally. I'm sure there's more. They have to be good for export. And I'm sure there's more things. They have to want to scale globally. So if, you know, if you want to stay a lifestyle company, that's wonderful, but that may not be a good fit for our program. And so, yeah, that's kind of the basis of Mana Up.
Awesome. So has, you know, your vision of Mana Up changed since you guys established yourself in 2017, right? Or has it kind of, you know, been on the same path in terms of your vision?
Yeah, I would say it's same and different. You know, the key pieces of Mana Up have not changed. We've had incredible products here. We have a strong global presence with the brand of Hawaii. And so those are key elements that are tried and true with what we're doing. But in terms of our values, and what we're trying to do is really help create opportunity here in the islands. And so as Mana Up has grown over the last 4 years, we always knew there would be more that Mana Up would turn into. There were some parts that didn't quite work. There were some parts that kept falling in our lap of like, hey, you guys need to do this. You guys need to do this. And our entrepreneurs kept sharing with us what their challenges were and needs. And so the company has grown quite a bit since then. But it's really based on us keeping our eyes open, being entrepreneurs ourselves, and continuing to pivot and grow based on that. So yes, I guess yes and no.
So the next question I had, kind of as a good segue to what you're saying, you know, you guys were a startup and you and Brittany kind of came together. How did you know that she was a good co-founder? Sorry if I.
Oh, that's a how did I know?
Yeah.
So, you know, Brittany and I, we really divide and conquer. We've really learned to trust each other. We have complementary skill sets, and we've learned to trust each other in knowing kind of which skills each of us are stronger in. And then we divide and conquer so we can get more done. And so I guess in first meeting her, I really liked her. We had some great conversations. We had a really great shared vision for, we didn't know exactly what Mana Up was going to be. You know, it wasn't like, all right, we're going to start this thing. It's going to do this, 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 and this. It was, you know, what's the problem we're trying to solve? Where is the gap? Where is there opportunity that really could be fueled by some of the experience and expertise that she and I both had separately, that we could create something really impactful and powerful here in Hawaii to help more entrepreneurs. So, you know, I think at first I just really liked her. And it, you know, she and I both have started other companies. And so we have a pretty good relationship with our gut. It felt right. We had hard conversations in the beginning just to really flesh out, you know, what are we doing? How are we structuring Mana Up so that they were in writing, we had an operating agreement. So all those things that are super important when you start a company with anyone as an entrepreneur or building an organization like Mana Up or even a venture fund.
So what has been your fondest memory of the journey so far over the last, 3 or 4 years now?
Yeah, I think it's been, 3 or 4 years. You know, I guess I would say it happens every year during Showcase. This will be our 6th Showcase. So right now I'm actually in the Hawaii Theater. We're filming right now for Showcase, our 6th one. And so I think after every showcase, like the night and the evening, I just have such a wonderful, just this beautiful, just kind of, I wouldn't call it pinnacle, but it's just this wonderful feeling of the work that we're doing and these entrepreneurs we're helping, and them really having their pitch nailed down and just feeling so confident and so great to kind of take on the world. It's just this amazing feeling amongst my colleagues and amongst our entrepreneurs that keeps growing, 63 and counting now. So I would say that happens, which is kind of fun. It gets to happen every year. I have this like wonderful moment.
So, when I was researching on Mana Up, I came across your LinkedIn profile, Mana Up's LinkedIn profile, and it was described as the organization's mission is designed to build the state's next 100 product companies earning $1 million or more in annual revenue.
I think it should have said 10 million or more in annual revenue. I don't know if that was a mistype for us or not what's going on, but that should be 10 million.
Oh, it should be 10 million? Okay. Yeah. So do you think, do you think we've gotten there yet, or we need a little bit more time and runway to get there, or will we get there at all?
Yeah. So when we launched was helping to build 100 companies earning 10 million or more in annual revenue based in Hawaii. So what would $1 billion do for Hawaii, and what would that look like from a jobs perspective? 10 million when you're at that point in annual revenue gets a lot interesting, especially when you think about all the executive level jobs that come along with that level of revenue. So if you think of any idea that anyone has, there's still departments that come alongside a business. That's finance, HR, sales, marketing, all those things, right? So how are we building those kinds of jobs in director, manager, vice president, chief marketing officer levels? And so I would say for sure, we haven't gotten there yet. I mean, that's pretty hardcore. You can kind of figure that out pretty fast. From an economic impact standpoint, last year, our companies, 47 of them, not including cohort 6, represented $43.4 million in annual revenue. Their average revenue was just under $1 million. And so, we're not quite there yet. We're, I guess, a 20th there. But they're all growing incredibly. So I would say their mean growth rate in 2020 was 65%. Their median growth rate was about, I think, 17%. So to me, it's that these companies are even growing through the pandemic. E-commerce, direct D2C, direct to consumer, all of that was super game changing for the companies. They went from, I think, 20% to like 60% in online for their main source of revenue. And actually 53% of the companies grew during the pandemic. And those same companies are having their best years ever this year, ever, even pre-pandemic numbers. So long story short, we're getting there, we're growing. I absolutely believe we're going to get there. And there's nothing telling me otherwise. It will take some time. We don't know how long it will take. There's lots of interesting things coming our way in the world, with the pandemic being one of them. But yes, the companies are all growing. They're all hiring. It's super exciting. So I really believe strongly that we will get there.
From a hiring perspective, it's interesting that you brought it up because, we work with manufacturers as well, right? So they kind of have these challenges in terms of recruitment from both, the manufacturing side or production side, with the lower skilled workers, all the way to executive level or, employees that have skills in marketing and e-com. Are you seeing that same thing with the companies in your portfolio?
Yes, we're seeing, I think we're seeing challenges with hiring. It depends on the area. I think with e-commerce and all of that, that's shifted this past year with the pandemic, or the past 2 years. We're seeing a big need for digital marketers and people who understand fulfillment and e-com. So I think that's a real opportunity for growth from a workforce development standpoint that many companies that we're seeing need. And it's also a super transferable skill set, one that you can have remote work-wise. So that we're big believers in how do we keep our ear on the ground of what companies are needing, and how do we start training for those skill sets. Yes, we've always had a challenge with seasoned operators here. And I think it's kind of a chicken and egg situation. It's, we need critical mass of jobs so that it becomes something that's not a big deal to be able to jump around, so that I'm a director of operations here or director of finance here, and then, the culture isn't fitting, or I think there's a real opportunity for me in this slightly bigger company, I jump over there. I think that's super exciting when you think about being able to grow skill set, and be able to jump around. I mean, that's not saying jumping around every 6 months, but every few years. I think it's important to have that critical mass of jobs, to be able to do that. So, that's what we're trying to help build, are these opportunities. But in the meantime, we have a job board and we're trying to help do placement. I know many others are. We've partnered with lots of companies to help do that. But yeah, that is a struggle that we have. But as these companies' revenues are growing, we're actually helping to create our own jobs and create salaries that make sense. And so I think that's all really exciting ways that we're trying to combat these challenges.
Awesome. By the way, we have a tech job fair coming up as well, so I'll be in touch about that. I think what was interesting for me, because as this is a women in tech session as well, I was looking through some of the stats on your website. In your 2021 economic report, you guys wrote that 63% of your companies are female led, which was really exciting. So kind of in your outreach to get people to join your cohort, do you guys actively recruit for female founders, or was that just kind of a sign that more resources are needed to support female founders, and that's why they're coming to you?
I would say that we always go for the best entrepreneurs, no matter what. So we don't look at if they're female. We don't try to recruit for female. We go for the best. It just so happens that they end up being super diverse and end up mostly being female, and a lot of Native Hawaiian, a lot of, just diverse ethnicities. And I think that's really a reflection of this industry, the consumer brands industry. It's a lot more diverse. And so, when we look for the best companies, the best entrepreneurs that we want to work with, we're super excited that ends up being really, really diverse. And that's just really exciting to see that there's just some amazing entrepreneurs, female especially, that are just kicking butt. And we want to help them to scale even more.
Yeah. Do you happen to see differences in the challenges between your male and female founders, or is that not distinctive yet?
Yeah, I would say, to answer your other question, I don't think that I think we've got great resources here for female entrepreneurs. We've got the Mink Center, we've got We by Rising Tide. There's a few more that popped up this year. And so it's wonderful to see all of that. And I think we've got great resources and a great ways for women to plug in. I think that from an entrepreneur standpoint, I don't see a difference between women's skill sets or men's. I think it's a combination of execution and strategy. I think those are the two important skills. You have to know what you're going to do and how you're going to do it, and then do it. Those to me would be the same skills that I would look for, that I think are really important for any type of entrepreneur.
Mm-hmm. So cohort 6 actually this year is your largest cohort ever. Do you intend to actually expand for the next cohort, or is this size something you guys are going to keep with?
So we normally say 10. Yeah. What was interesting with this cohort is we had our largest application ever. We had 130 applications, which was our largest number, which is super cool to see. I would also say a third of those applications were companies that had been started in the last 12 to 18 months. And that's really interesting from looking at the pandemic as well. A lot of new startups, new small business formation, which is great to see from a pipeline standpoint. That means that people, maybe they're, finally ready to get going and they're like excited to start their business, or there are enough resources around that people feel supported to do all that. So that was really neat to see. I don't see necessarily, sorry, there's a motorcycle driving by. So I don't necessarily see us increasing the size. We are extremely hands-on program. We have our workshops and more of our group learning, where we fly all the entrepreneurs in every week for a 6-hour session. We also have a super curated part of the program where we're actually hand selecting and introducing individual mentors to individual companies and working on specific challenges for one company that's totally different than another. So it's very intense. It's 6 months. And so I don't see us growing more than 12. We actually had 12 this time because Brittany and I couldn't totally agree on 10. So we decided to go for 12 so we could just call it a day, because there were just so many good ones. And there were ones we wish we could have selected as well, but really most of the companies that have gotten in have applied, 2 to 3 times before getting in. So it's wonderful. We always encourage people to apply no matter what phase they're in, because it's great for us to get to know them and start to learn about some of the things they're challenged with. We give really heavy feedback. We end up doing about 35 to 40 interviews per application. So as we get to know the company, it really helps to create pipeline. It helps to create us understanding who they are. Maybe opportunities may come up that we can send their way. So it's always a good thing to get on our radar. But also just, as we give you feedback, one of the big questions we'll ask in the next year round of interviewing is, so what have you accomplished since the last time we spoke to you? And that would be a really big indicator.
Yeah. So I know you guys have something really exciting coming up in a couple of days, I would say. Would you like to share about that?
Yes, I would. So we will be hosting our Mana Up Showcase. And so with the pandemic, we went virtual. So we did a broadcast event. We used to host an in-person, showcase event with 1,000 people. We thought that was huge. Last year, we had almost 200,000 people watch the show from around the world, about like half here. And then the other was mostly mainland, and then about 5% Japan. So we're going even bigger this year. We will be hosting it live stream on Facebook and YouTube with our partners, Hawaiian Airlines and many others. On November 4th, the pre-show starts at 3:30. The main show starts at 4. And if you miss that one, it'll be on KHON2 on Sunday at 7 p.m. It'll be an hour-long version of the show. We also purchased time on Fox 5 in San Diego. So if you're in the San Diego area, you'll be able to watch the show on Saturday at 9 p.m. San Diego time on the 13th. And then we'll be hosting a Japan version of the show. I have a Japanese co-host, and we're doing a whole Japanese version of the show, which will also be the weekend of the 13th, I believe at 9 or 10 a.m. Japan time. So lots of ways to watch. We're partnering with Haku Collective. We're going to be featuring rising musicians, some of which have never been seen before. Kimie Minor is our headliner from a music standpoint. She's amazing. And so we're super excited about that. We'll be featuring our 12 entrepreneurs. They'll be doing pitching. We'll be having QVC. So they'll be talking about their products, how to use them, and all the other fun stuff about it. We'll also be doing our giveaways as well. So as you register for the event, it's free to register. And that will be your ticket that we'll be calling on for all these giveaways during the show. Some of the bigger ones are a trip for 2 on Hawaiian Airlines, anywhere in the US. We've got a year of King's Hawaiian Sweetbread, and many more awesome. We've got a whole bunch of food and wine fest tickets too. So yeah, register now, manauphawaii.com, and you'll be automatically entered. We're actually giving some giveaways away before the show. So the earlier you get in, the more opportunities you have for more of the giveaways. So yeah, looking forward to seeing everybody there.
Yeah, that's so amazing. I'm definitely going to check it out later. How did you guys come up with this idea? Was it a team effort, group thing?
For the showcase?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, so we originally had the showcase in person. So we had pitches, we had a marketplace, and we had food and drink. And that was really kind of our end of program event. It was really a community event. We had 1,000 people. We took over 2 floors at DFST Galleria. And it was just really incredible for the entrepreneurs to really hone their pitch, then to have the marketplace. And then when the pandemic hit, we knew we couldn't host a 1,000-person event. We could probably not even host a 5-person event. So we thought, okay, well, obviously we're going to do something, but how do we think about going even bigger? And also, how do we really think about this concept of bringing Hawaii to the world? How do we create that world stage for Hawaii, which is really what we're trying to do anyway? So it became this, people don't have to come here to experience these entrepreneurs and these products. How do we stay connected? And how do we really think about making it easy for others to discover these new products coming into Hawaii and learning the stories behind them. Storytelling is a huge part of our program. And that's what's really neat. We're doing pitches are going on right now as I speak on stage. And it's just so cool. In 2.5 minutes, these entrepreneurs are really nailing like what are they creating and why, and like what's the story behind it. And it's just really neat to learn all that. And I think people, tourists, locals alike really want to learn and want to create that deeper understanding. So it's I would say it was a combined effort from our whole team as to what this show could look like once we decided to go virtual. And we learned a ton last year. So we're going way bigger in certain areas. We're pulling back in certain other areas. Actually, it feels like we're just going way bigger in all areas, but we'll see what happens. But we're excited to beat our 200,000 person number last year and have even more people experience the show.
Yeah, probably, hopefully by next year, you're like, what, 200,000? We're having half a million. Yeah, that's so awesome. I'm so happy to hear that. So Meli, besides your work with Mana Up, I know you also serve as the president of the Hawaii Venture Capital Association. It's like your second baby. I see all these emails coming out. So how would you, with the pandemic and taking that into consideration, how would you describe the state of venture capital in Hawaii today?
I would say it's not as present as it could be. We do have a handful of funds. What's neat is, even this year, Mana Up Capital was launched. And then the Don Lippert's fund, Earthshot, I think it's called Earthshot Ventures or Capital. And that's super exciting. So, these are two more funds that didn't exist even a year ago. And so I do think it's growing. I think a lot of, for us, our companies are growing into a stage where venture makes sense. But I've always said, and this is more of a known thing, the money will follow. So as these companies, and especially our companies, are seeing on a global stage as these amazing quality products, there will be money interested. And so I do think that venture is growing in Hawaii. I think it's an exciting time. And so it's not there yet, but I'm really positive as to where I see it going in the future, especially with the caliber of our companies in later stage that makes sense for venture.
Mm-hmm. So, you have been as an entrepreneur as well as in venture capital, and now you have Mana Up doing investments, right? And receiving investments. Has your investment thesis, you think, changed over the last couple of years as a venture capitalist?
That's a good question. I would say my investment thesis hasn't changed for Mana Up Capital because we just launched it. That we are investing in consumer brands companies that are headquartered here. I would say my thesis in general has broadened. I think in the past, I was only thinking about kind of high growth technology, but I see that that's a big piece of venture, but also that the venture world is shifting. There's a lot more consumer brands, venture capital funds launching. And I think we're also looking at different ways around ROI and getting, investment return, as well as looking at the companies that having more like steady growth as opposed to only having the hockey stick. So yes, I would say I've broadened my investment thesis.
So, okay, so for Mana Up Capital, at least it's been a short runway, but, do you have a defining moment as an investor so far?
I don't think I've had that defining moment yet. I think the best is yet to come. The best is yet to come.
Cool. So, we'll get back to that maybe in a couple of years from now and see.
Yes. I'm very excited about our fund. We're the largest venture fund that is 100% focused on Hawaii companies. So that's really exciting just from a Hawaii standpoint, and the access to capital, especially in the consumer brands industry.
How about consumer goods? Is your fund considered large for a fund focusing on consumer / retail products?
I think there's a whole range, This is our fund one. So we actually wanted to keep the fund smaller, so we could deploy capital quickly, and then start raising for fund two. So I don't know in the scale of consumer brands or consumer goods funds, but this was a really good size for us, and the size of our investments we think makes sense, and we know the companies well. And they're at a stage now where this size of investment makes sense as well. And ideally in a couple of years, we'll be ready to be putting in more money, and at which point I guess the fund size will be bigger too.
Yeah, I'm super excited to, see that. And also for the audience, if you guys have questions, just throw them into Q&A and then I'll pick them up as we go along. So Meli, I want to kind of talk a little bit about your background as an entrepreneur, because I think that's really important in how you kind of guided a lot of other entrepreneurs through the Mana Up program as well. So your foray into the world entrepreneurship started with Nirvino, which is actually the #1 ranked wine app in the Apple Store back in 2007. So I think my first question to you would be, which do you prefer, being a startup entrepreneur or being an investor and enabler right now?
I would say I consider myself all three still. But I really love being, I guess you call it an enabler, because as an entrepreneur, I learned a ton. In starting my own, having to kill what I ate, and getting that kind of, that mindset, that ownership mindset, I think is super important. But as I've shifted gears into helping more entrepreneurs, to me, that's super fulfilling from a mentorship standpoint, from a investor standpoint. I think it's really important as we build our community of entrepreneurs and small businesses. And also, one of the things we're really working on with many of our companies is on their leadership. So, working with them as leaders in our community and what is their give back. And that's super powerful when you think about that from what our community needs and how we are developing new leaders. And that impact is even greater than just my own company. So I would say the latter. Yeah.
Wow. So what brought you home to Hawaii at that time?
Yeah. So I moved home from San Francisco in 2012. I was living there. I had started my first company in 2007. And the wine app was doing well. And I wanted to just kind of shift gears, and I kept thinking about Hawaii and like, why can't I be in Hawaii? And why was there so many challenges that I felt when I graduated college were reasons why I couldn't come home if I wanted to do something different, that there wasn't a place for me there. And so I thought, well, I feel like startups and entrepreneurship, I'd really gotten turned on to that in the Bay Area. And why can't we have that in Hawaii? And so I kept coming home more as I was working for myself, and started seeing some new things popping up, like Box Jelly had launched, Ray Chung had launched Box Jelly, which is super cool. And I know you guys are at the Sandbox. We had our first startup weekend. And so I had known about that. And so I thought, well, these things are kind of getting going, could I move home and help build an innovation ecosystem? What could I do to contribute to that? And so that was really kind of why I moved home, was to see what I could do to help contribute, especially with the experience I had as an entrepreneur in the Bay Area.
So do you think the state of entrepreneurship has changed since you moved back in 2012?
I do, actually, 100%. We didn't have any accelerators when I moved home. We now have, I don't even know how many we have. Many accelerators in different spaces. We have incubators. We have more venture funds. I mean, I know we had venture capital prior to, to me moving back. And that's been kind of up and down, over the past 30, 40 years. But yes, I think it was exciting in this moment I had where, previous, like 2012, 2013, I knew about literally everything happening in the entrepreneur space. Like there would be one networking event here, and then 2 weeks later there'd be one other thing happening. HTDC was always in the middle of it. I know you guys used to have those tech nights or something.
Wetware Wednesdays.
Yeah, Wetware Wednesdays. That was like the big thing to meet up for. And the moment I had when I literally didn't know something going on, like there was some awesome networking or tech event or entrepreneur event, And I was like, oh, I didn't know about that. I was like, that is amazing. There's stuff that's like bigger than all of us. It's totally growing. And now I don't know hardly anything because except for what we're doing probably, but, and I love that, you know, it's so big, it's so much happening, so much collision happening, entrepreneurs meeting and all these things. That to me is a huge indicator that it's just exponentially grown and it will continue to. I mean, for us at Mana Up, a lot of times, especially with networking with our entrepreneurs, sometimes we just get out of the way. You know, we get them all in a room together with mentors and we just like stand back and get out of the way because, you know, that's where the magic happens. So I know that magic is happening all over the place. It's really exciting to see.
Yeah, I completely agree with you because I moved here 2016. I remember meeting you at Sultan Ventures and, you know, getting a free class pass from you for an entrepreneurship class. And yeah, I agree with you at that time. You know, I kind of knew everything that was happening, but 5 years now in 2021, I'm like, oh, and I don't know, do you see that with the pandemic? You know, we have a lot of people coming from the mainland moving here, like a lot of techies and tech entrepreneurs. You know, are a lot of them reaching out to you guys to offer, I don't know, services or being mentors and things like that?
Yeah, we've had definitely some reaching out who've moved here recently, that want to, you know, give back or get involved. And that's been really neat to see. I mean, for us, our program is super niche. We only work with consumer brands, entrepreneurs. And so for us, we're not a general program. And so, you know, there may be some people that reach out and I'll introduce them to some other programs that may be a better fit. We're just really niche. So if there's not a direct way that it makes sense, you know, we're really kind of specific, which we love because once you get very specific, most of our companies can benefit from that area of specificity. But yes, we love that people are reaching out. We want more people to reach out. We've always had challenge having mentors in Hawaii, especially in our space, because it's so niche, that we've met some incredible people that have been very game changing from expertise standpoint, opening door standpoint, and even other programs that are more national based. Like the ICCC program that Kaiser Permanente has been involved with, that's been really helpful for the companies to gain even more resources. So we love collaboration and partnering. And, you know, we know building Mana Up, when we launched in 2018, there were incredible programs prior to us. You know, HTDC has been an incredible program. And so we really see ourselves as connectors. There'll be areas we build out if we don't see that there's something that's been built out in that specific area. But otherwise, we're like, you need help with manufacturing? Talk to Wayne or you know, like, please talk to Innovate guys, because they are the experts. And that is amazing. We have programs like this that can really complement and really elevate what the entrepreneurs are trying to do. So we really do see ourselves as just connectors, connecting the dots for all the entrepreneurs to work with all the great resources here.
So, you know, as an entrepreneur yourself before, have you ever had to tell any of the entrepreneurs going through your program that, you know, their product or idea is not working out?
No, I would definitely not say that. I would say that as entrepreneurs, you are continuing to pivot and to adjust. So, you know, there may be a particular product that's not doing well. And so, you know, and as an entrepreneur, you should be keeping an eye on those things, you know, and your financials, like where are you spending money? Where are you making money? And how do you have a good relationship with those models so that you will know yourself if something's not working? So no, we've never had to do that, but, you know, we've had, you know, harder conversations around, you know, where maybe some more focus should be going into, but no.
So more from a kind of giving advice, more from a strategic, you know, perspective, right? I guess.
Yeah. And connecting them with mentors that may be helpful for them to really look at their financials as in a strategic way, so that they can learn from the numbers. Yeah.
So what is one advice do you always find yourself giving to the entrepreneurs coming through your program?
I would say, that's a good question. You know, I would say that the advice we continue to give the entrepreneurs is we say a lot to collaborate with each other, because a lot of times it's this vetted resources or vetted service providers or advice they can give because they just went through that challenge that someone's going through. We kind of do a round circle where all the entrepreneurs share, one thing they're challenged with and one thing they're really good at that they'd be willing to help others with. So that's, to us, really kind of driving home this concept of creating community, trusted community that becomes really powerful, and to start leaning into that immediately.
That's a good one. Collaboration. That's something that we see in our own programs as well. And I think they get a lot of value kind of working with each other on, like a common challenge. So, we know that you're passionate in helping Hawaii develop the next generation of entrepreneurs, and innovators in some sense. So what else are you passionate about?
I'm going to answer you, but now we're having music on stage. Can you hear the music on stage?
No.
You can't? Okay, I'll keep the door open, but I can. One of our bands is playing now. Okay, so what inspires me?
Yeah, what else are you passionate about? And also what inspires you?
Yeah. I would say passion, it's tough because I'm so passionate about ideas and, things starting from nothing or just growing. So it's constantly changing. So I can't even call that. I don't even know what I'd call that. I'm very also passionate about my silky chickens. So I have chickens at my house and I love them. They're my stress relief. I just, hang out with them and watch them have their weird pecking order. And it just kind of helps me to check out for a second in the middle of the day if I'm working from home. But yeah, I think for me, I'm really passionate, and this is still connected to how can we create a Hawaii that can sustain itself, that can create opportunities so people can live the way they want to live. And really have choice, and the choices that I didn't feel like I had when I graduated from college and I wanted to move home and I felt like I couldn't. So I believe, and I'm passionate of just about opportunity and creating just opportunity. And so that's what really drives me. But I'm also very passionate about swimming. I love open ocean swimming. So I do some of that. And I think for me, it's also a lot about balance. In terms of, also having a lot of like self-love and self-compassion. I could be very hard on myself. And I know I've been working on that, just even for kind of what keeps me going, to be able to have those really intense moments of our work and the great things that we're doing, but also be able to carve in times to have other passions, and be able to have some of that balance.
So I want to go back to the chickens because that's really fascinating. I mean, did you hatch them yourself, or like did you, I don't know, adopt them from the shelter? Like, where did you find those chickens?
So I got them from a breeder when they were like a week old. So I've had them since they were little baby chicks. And now they're outside free range hanging out in my backyard. And they're silky chickens. So they're really docile. And if you look up silky chickens, they look like Muppets, and they have like fur everywhere, and they like to snuggle, and they're hilarious. So yes.
So have you sworn off like eating chicken?
Well, okay, I still eat chicken and I do still eat eggs, but I was at this restaurant a couple months ago that had silky chicken on the menu, and I got so upset. I'm like, you can't have silky chicken on the menu. Chicken's one thing, but like silky chicken's a whole other situation.
Okay, that's really interesting to know. So I think the other question that I like to ask my guests is, how would you like to be remembered as Meli, 5 years from now, 10 years from now,
50 years from now? I think I'd like to be remembered as someone who, that's a good question. I mean, that's a tough question, Ellen. Jeez. Like, am I writing my obituary
at 3 p.m. Right?
I guess, remembered as someone who really, really looked at Hawaii and what were our strengths and how did we really double down on those to create opportunity. I would love if, as we are hopefully successful in helping to build 100 companies earning 10 million or more in annual revenue, that we have this amazing, critical mass of jobs and interesting jobs and talent here, that can then just grow into all these other industries. We're all trying to combat this and come at this in different ways. And I think all of our efforts are super important and needed, because this isn't a silver bullet. But I do believe that jobs is a super important piece. And also, as we look at regenerative tourism and regenerative economy here in Hawaii, that makes sense. I'm a strong believer that the work that we're doing is a big piece of that. And how do we think about bringing in new dollars into the state, economic development, economic impact, and those multipliers as we continue to need to increase exports. And I think that brand of Hawaii and leveraging tourism, and bringing Hawaii to people that maybe they don't all have to come here. Some of them absolutely should. But how do we think about not turning our back on tourism, but really leaning into it and leveraging it? Because the brand of Hawaii and this global love for Hawaii is bigger than tourism. It's actually, it's aspirational, and it's not just about people coming here. A lot of it is. And when they leave, stay connected to Hawaii, and they can continue to be reminded and buy products. And that is absolutely where I see a huge opportunity to continue to grow our revenues coming into the state.
Wow. So, for the younger generation, what is one piece of advice you would give them?
All right, Ellen, you're really hitting the hard ones here. One piece of advice I would give students, I would say network. And it's not really called networking. I would say just grow your network. I think a lot of times for young people, they're in their little clique or their little group of friends, and it's all like super fun. You hang out with your friends, and that's great. But I think you should always think about, who have you not met? And one, don't be mean to anybody, because in Hawaii, as we all know, your reputation in high school will be your reputation for life, especially if you're going to live here. But regardless of high school or college, how do you continue to grow your networks? Because I promise that is the biggest piece. Even when we were building Mana Up, was a big part of like our networks, in socializing the idea, having people asking questions, supporting the organization. All of those things were really part of the network. So, and you never know who may end up being somebody that is important to the growth of what you're trying to build, but also paying it forward and seeing, how can you be in service to them and how can they be in service to you? So I think it's super important to continue to grow new networks. You have your great friends, join the soccer team or some, debate club, or in college, there's just lots of different circles. So I think that the more, the merrier, in terms of how you do that. It's really important.
Network, grow your network.
Grow your network.
So I promise just 2 more questions, and I have no questions coming from the audience, so I'm just going to use my time. If you could have coffee with anyone, dead or alive, who would it be?
Jeez, Ellen, you are really killing me here, but okay. There's no way you can't hear that music right now either.
Oh, I can't hear anything.
Oh, okay. I mean, I would love to have coffee with Ruth Bader Ginsburg. And I know she's not, I just think she's just an incredible woman. And just someone that has been at the forefront of women empowerment, and just the way that she carries herself, the way she thinks, the way she had always operated. I would love to sit down to have coffee with her. So yeah, that would be my person. She also went to Cornell, which I did too. So.
Oh, she's alumni. That's so cool. So last question, before we wrap up the session today, give us one word you would like to leave the audience with and why.
I would say the one word would be level up. And that is a word very dear to my heart, because that really is what Mana Up is all about, is to level up. And I think we've all had to learn to level up, especially this last year and a half. But as entrepreneurs, we're always leveling up. As investors, as we engage with life, how do we continue to have that entrepreneurial mindset, having that ownership mindset, and really leveling up and coming at challenges, and coming at just engaging with the world and continuing to level up. I think that's just the key piece that I would want to leave everyone with.
Awesome. So